Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Wednesday, December 4th. Today, we have a huge show for you. We're going to be focusing on a couple of different sports, starting off with college football. The new playoff rankings, the final regular season one has come out. We'll talk about what that means as we head into college football championship week. We'll also talk about some crazy chaos playoff scenarios for those teams that are on the bubble in college football. Then we turn our attention to the NBA power rankings every Wednesday as always, as well as a look at the NBA Cup. The final 8 teams have been set. All of the group rounds are done. We'll talk about what that bracket looks like and who might advance to win the second ever Cup. The second ever NBA Cup. Finally, ending in baseball. A brand new proposed rule from Commissioner Rob Manfred. We'll talk about what the Golden at Bat rule is, whether or not it's a good idea, and what it means for the future of baseball. We'll talk about all of that and more in just a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Wednesday, December 4th. But like I was saying, we are going to start off our show here today in the world of college football. Another wild week has led to yet another college football playoff ranking. We're here to react to it. 25-1, starting from the bottom in this group that I'm going to call the little bottom group of 5 group right there. Memphis is someone that I threw in there at the bottom of my list as well. Army, a team I don't think really should have gotten in there. They dropped Tulane from the rankings. Texas A&M and Kansas State both fell. All 3 of those fell from the rankings after last week's performance. All 3 of those took brutal losses. I'm a little surprised that Army is still in there. Not that it really matters that much, but I am a little bit surprised that Army is still in there at 24. Colorado moves up a couple spots to 23. Syracuse all the way up to 22. I'm glad they're getting some respect. That's a team that I have been a lot higher on for a while. I'm glad they're getting some love after a huge win over Miami. UNLV at 20. They're a team that has a real shot. Win and you're into the college football playoff. Missouri, another team that I don't think they really should be this high up, but 9-3 SEC squad, to each their own. BYU is a team that should maybe be a little bit higher. At 10-2, I feel like they're getting a little bit of disrespect. Yes, they lost to Kansas, but they've also taken care of business against an SMU team that right now is projected to get a bye, and for my money, is a lock to make the college football playoffs. Clemson at 17, Iowa State at 16, and this is where it gets really interesting, right? Because this is something that the college football committee has kind of been hinting at for a while. The winner of the Big 12 is not going to get that bye. Right now, the 2 teams that are at the top ranked in the Big 12, 15 and 16, Arizona State and Iowa State. Those are the 2 highest ranked Big 12 teams. You've also got 2 others a little below them in BYU and Colorado, none of which have a real shot of making it in. But those teams aren't getting a bye. It's going to be a 12 seed for those teams, whichever one, Arizona State or Iowa State, whichever one ends up getting in there, that is going to be a 12 seed. And for all the people that have been talking about, the 5 seed has it easy. That's the easiest path. They're going to get to play a nobody, and then they're going to get to play the 4 seed, right? Because they don't reseed. This makes that path just a little bit more difficult. And I don't know if that is necessarily a good or bad thing. They're still going to have to play the Mountain West champ second, just as opposed to first. It makes that road probably just a little bit harder. Do I hate what's going on? No, I don't necessarily hate it. I also think that the Big 12 teams are objectively better, or at least Arizona State is objectively better than a Boise State team that, for all the good that Boise State has been, for how good Boise State has been all season long, you take a look at, how they've been performing as of late. And while they still have, one of the best players in the country in Ashton Genty, this team as of late has not been performing the way it was at the beginning of the season. I think that's really an interesting way of looking at things, where you're rewarding previous placement a lot more, which is kind of how it always goes. But I do think that Arizona State at least should have been ranked ahead of Boise State. That's just a small gripe, though, and that's my first one of here. This is where we get to the real bubble teams, though. Once we get past that 15 spot, that bubble block of Alabama, Miami, Ole Miss, and South Carolina. Those are the four bubble teams that we take a look at that were causing all the controversy. Miami, of course, takes their second loss in 3 games, second loss of the season, falls out of the college football playoffs. They're now the first team out behind an Alabama squad that gets in at the very end. I hate that. I absolutely hate that Alabama has found a way into the playoff yet again. If you're not playing in a college football championship game, you are most likely in as long as the favorite wins, which sucks which sucks because Alabama adds their record just does not deserve to get in. You take a look at an Alabama team that, well, yes, they have one acceptable loss to a Tennessee squad that's ranked all the way up at 7. They also have 2 losses that I cannot overlook. Yes, they beat Ole Miss. Yes, they beat they beat South Carolina. Yes, they beat Georgia. But they also lost to one of, if not the worst team in the entire SEC in Oklahoma that finished at 6-6, as well as a 6-6 Vandy, who I think Vandy deserves a little bit more respect. But that's still 2 really bad losses. When you're comparing that directly to Miami's resume, Miami might not have that key victory, but they lost to a good Georgia Tech squad and a Syracuse squad that is now finished in the top 25. Those are both losses that you look at and you say, yeah, I kind of understand. And I understand bad defense is bad, and that's not gonna help their case out here. But Miami, I think, also deserves to be in over Alabama. Behind them, Ole Miss, I don't think they really deserve a shot, but South Carolina is the team that I think should be in. You take a look at, again, I understand, losses to Ole Miss, losses to Alabama, but the way that the committee has kind of been treating things as of late is, what have you done for me lately? That's fine. That's how I think it should be done anyway, especially when we're looking at that final spot in the college football playoff. South Carolina has done everything you could have possibly asked for them to do. They beat the number 12 team in the nation last week in Clemson on the road on rivalry weekend. Lenore Sellers has been playing like one of the best players in all of the country right now. And yes, they lost to Alabama. It's true. They lost to Ole Miss. All 3 of South Carolina losses, including the one to LSU, were good losses. In fact, they should not have lost that game to LSU. There was a mistake, a pick 6 that was called back that eventually led to an LSU victory that would have flipped the game. That's a 14-point swing right there. That instead of losing by 3, they probably win that game by at least 4 points. If that pick 6 isn't called back on a mistake that the SEC later said, my bad, guys, we messed up. That shouldn't have been the way it was called. That took South Carolina out of the playoffs right there, and I don't understand how more people aren't talking about this. The Alabama game, they probably should have won that game. Couple bad decisions, a missed field goal at the end after recovering an onside kick. They end up losing that one. That one I don't really have too many gripes with. And of course, they got destroyed by Ole Miss. But this is a South Carolina team that I think should absolutely be in with their resume. I don't believe Alabama is the better team than South Carolina. I also think Miami should be in ahead of Alabama. 2 losses against 2 good ACC schools should count more than 3 losses, 2 of them against bad SEC schools. But that's just my opinion. I don't hate the rest of this ranking. I think overall, they've basically narrowed in the right teams in the top 10, right? Oregon, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Georgia, Ohio State, Tennessee, SMU, Indiana, Boise, and Arizona State. I think those 11 teams that are in the bracket right now are great, perfect. It's going to be that last team, that 11 seed, that bubble spot that is going to cause issues for everyone. And right now, it's Alabama's, and unless some craziness happens, they have basically locked up that spot. We'll talk more about that in the next segment coming up in just a second. But outside of that 11 seed, I think this is a solid ranking. There's just a couple things I would change on the bubble. But let me know what you think of these college football playoff rankings. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we take a look at all the different scenarios for the 12 teams in and around the college football they could find their way out and what it looks like in the most chaotic scenario yet. We'll talk about all of that and more coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient. Hoping one day I'll blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the news it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Wednesday, December 4th. If you are just tuning in, we just went over the playoff committee's rankings, the final one of the regular season. 12 games down, just the conference championships to go before we get the final rankings of the college football playoffs. In this segment, we finish up our college football talk talking about some of the scenarios for some of these bubble teams and some of these conference championship games, how we might see the final bracket play out if we get a certain combination of things to happen. We'll talk about all of that in just a second, but before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Wednesday, December 4th. But like I was saying, we are going to finish up our college football segment here. We're going to get into some crazy playoff scenarios. Playoff scenarios that could make the chaos of this college football season get even more topsy-turvy. And we'll start off with the most simple one. All of the favorites win. That means SMU wins the ACC. That means Oregon wins the Big Ten. That means that Texas wins the SEC. And of course, that means that Arizona State and Boise both win their conference championship games. In that case, nothing's going to change, right? Nothing's going to change. All of those are going to be the same. Maybe we get a little bit of shuffling around the order, but the same teams will make it, right? And that's the simple ending. But we know the way this season has gone. This might be the most chaotic season in the history of college football, and I highly doubt that it's going to end on a nice, simple note like that. So let's take a look at some of these chaos scenarios. We're going to eliminate anything in the Big Ten because I do think that all four of those teams, Oregon, Penn State, Indiana, and of course, and Ohio State, all are locks to get into the playoffs. It doesn't really matter which one of them wins between Penn State and Oregon. All four of those should make the college football playoff regardless. The question is Penn State and Oregon both going to host, or will Penn State/Oregon fall off a little bit and end up having to travel? That's going to be the one and only question when it comes to the Big Ten. So we're going to ignore the Big Ten in this scenario. The SEC, we're also going to ignore. Both Georgia and Texas, I think, are pretty much locks to get in, regardless of who wins that game. Tennessee also should be a lock to get in. Where the chaos begins is in the ACC. And this is where all of the chaos really does stem from. You have a Clemson team currently ranked at 17, ranked below both of the Big 12 teams, which makes you think if Clemson wins, they will be that 12 seed, and the winner of the Big 12 will get that extra bye. Now, in that situation, the big question then goes to SMU. Does SMU get in? Have they done enough in the committee's eyes to get in with a loss to Clemson? And this is going to be a very, very dangerous road for the playoff committee to travel on, right? Because if they say you lost the conference championship game, you were in. You were the number 8 team in the nation beforehand. You lost to Clemson. Now you're out. It goes to what Ole Miss's head coach Lane Kiffin was saying. Why would you want to play in the conference championship game? It will ruin conference championship games forever. Do I think that's what's going to happen? I don't. But looking at this committee right now, I think there is a real shot that if SMU ends up losing that game by bad enough, Miami finds its way into the college football playoff instead of SMU, a team in the same conference that did not win or make the ACC title games, gets in ahead of a team in the same conference that lost the title game. Now, I think what they're signaling by putting Miami at 12, and again, I'm not in that room, I don't know for sure, but for my money, what I'm reading on this ranking is with Miami at 12, they're basically saying that the ACC will have SMU in regardless, because in my mind, you cannot justify putting a different ACC team in over SMU. Now, if a team like Ole Miss or South Carolina was behind Alabama at 12 and Miami was a little bit further back, I think then there's a chance that the committee looks at this and says the ACC doesn't deserve to have 2 bids. And I think that's the wrong choice. I think SMU gets in regardless, but running with the chaos scenario. SMU loses, Clemson gets in. They're going to be that 12 seed. Whoever wins that Big 12 championship game, they're going to go to the number 4, because right now, 15, 16, 17, Arizona State, Iowa State, Clemson, those are going to be 2 of your conference championship winners. We're also going with the assumption that Boise State beats UNLV in this scenario. Now, if you wanted to get even crazier, UNLV wins. That is now 3 teams from 15 on back that are going to make the college football playoff with those auto bids, which pushes Boise out. It's going to push Boise out there. They're going to be the 12 seed now, UNLV. Your 3 and 4 seeds will be in 15th and 17th or 16th and 17th in the country right now. That is full chaos mode. That is where you still have your Big Ten and your SEC at the top, but behind them, Boise State's going to fall out. Is it time for another SEC team to fall in? Is there a way for the SEC to get 5 teams in? That is what the big question is. Is the SEC bias going to come in, and why? And which one of them will it be? Signals seem to be Mississippi State, but I think not Mississippi State, Ole Miss. But the most chaotic I think it gets. Just looking at the way they have it now and trying to read their mindset for how they're going to rank things if this goes full chaos. You're just going to get a different conference championship, and everything that's locked is basically locked, which is probably how it should be. You have to respect the conference championship game. Otherwise, no one is going to want to play in it, and it's going to be the death of the conference championship as we know it. They might shift into a full FCS system like they do over there, where they don't play conference championship games. They just give it to the winner and then go off rankings. That might be how they go from now on. Not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. We'll see how it evolves from here, but this is a crucial decision for the College Football Playoff Committee in this hypothetical if they get there. I don't think they're going to make that change. I think SMU's a lock, but that is the last moving piece here. SMU versus SMU if they lose versus Miami, Ole Miss, or South Carolina. And I think SMU's done just enough to claim their spot in. At 11-2, I think they're a lock in. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of these crazy college football playoff scenarios. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention to the NBA. The NBA Power Rankings coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Wednesday, December 4th. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over the college football playoff scenario and the rankings as the final regular season college football playoff rankings have officially come out. In this segment, we turn our attention to the NBA. The NBA, as we do every single Wednesday, we deal with their power rankings. 30-1 coming up in just a second, but before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Wednesday, December 4th. But like I was saying, get into the NBA power rankings here, starting off at number 30. Who else but the Washington Wizards? This is a Washington Wizards team that has lost 15 straight games, and while it's not the biggest storyline in the NBA right now as we're dealing with all the NBA Cup things, there is a real chance that they challenge that record, most losses in a row. Right now, they're looking at a brutal stretch for the rest of the month. They get the Mavs, then the Nuggets, the Grizzlies, the Cavs, the Celtics, their next 5 games. Then they get the Hornets. That's potentially a winnable game, but the Hornets have a very deadly offense, so we'll say they don't get that win there. After those 6 games, they get the Bucks, who are playing a lot better, the Thunder, one of the top teams in the league, and then the Hornets again. We'll say just for fun that they lose both of those games to the Hornets. They get the Knicks twice to finish out the year. There is a real chance that they do not win a game until the year is over, which means they have not won a game in almost 2 months. The Wizards are one of the worst teams, or are the worst team in basketball. They might break that streak that the Pistons tied last year of most losses in a row in NBA history. That's going to be a fun thing to check on every week in the NBA. Keep an eye on that one. The Washington Wizards are chasing infamy right now. At 29, we have the New Orleans Pelicans. They got a little bit healthier, right? The New Orleans Pelicans got a little bit healthier. They finally got back CJ McCollum. They got back DeJounte Murray, but it has not made a difference. DeJounte Murray has been so inefficient. He's been shooting horribly from the field. They have not really meshed together yet the way that they were expecting to, and the way that they kind of were at the beginning of the season. They're still dealing with a lot more injuries. Zion still is not back. They're still dealing with a couple of other injuries down their bench, but having a bunch of those stars back, you'd think this team would turn a corner. This is a Pelicans franchise that seems perpetually cursed to be dealing with injuries in the worst possible way. I hope they find a way to get everybody healthy at once, because this is a team that could be very dangerous, very fun to watch if everyone is out there at once. For now, Pelicans at 29, though. 28, we have the Utah Jazz. A couple of weird coaching decisions, or I guess just one big coaching decision this week for the Utah Jazz. A timeout called on a game-winning, what would have been a game-winning layup by Colin Sexton against the Lakers. Doesn't really end up that way. Ends up missing a game-winning shot after that timeout. Some head-scratching moves there, but that's just what happens when you're a team like the Jazz this year. A lot of things are not going right, but there's a little bit of brightness in that future. Some of their young guys are coming in and producing when they need them to. This is not a team that was expecting to win games, and for a team without much expectations, I'd say it's not an awful season for them so far. At 27, we have the Philadelphia 76ers. All right, that's not working. Philadelphia 76ers at 27 here. They're a team that had a lot of expectations, but now injuries, again, have just hit them like a truck. You had to deal with some, of course, Joel Embiid injuries. Paul George hyperextends his knee yet again. He still has not come back. Jared McCain's been playing great ball, but it's not enough. They don't have any big men. Andre Drummond just went down as well, and while he's not a guy you want to rely on in the post, when you have a short supply of big men, he's a guy that could be useful to have. Sixers are having a nightmare season right now, and they're down here at 27 to show it. At 26, we have the Charlotte Hornets. This is a fun team. This is not a good team, don't get me wrong, but this is a fun Charlotte Hornets team. They have an offense that they can just go and score on you, right? LaMelo Ball can just drop 50 points on your head any given night. He can make ridiculous shots. They don't have a great defense. They've got a lot of young players. They're doing their thing. They're a fun team, not a good team, which not necessarily a bad thing in the NBA right now, but still, you'd like to see a little bit more winning. That's not what's going to happen this year. They're still building, and it's good to see a star in a small market in the NBA. I know that's not usually what happens in the NBA. Usually they get shipped off to some big market, but it's good to see a star in smaller markets like Charlotte. At 25, we have the Portland Trailblazers. They went on a bit of a run there earlier a couple weeks ago. They've fallen all the way back down to earth. They really have. A couple of their moves in the offseason just have not worked out the way they were supposed to. Denny Avdija from the Wizards has fallen off a cliff back to where he was a couple of seasons ago. He's on the bench playing a little bit better now. The young guys are, again, are playing good. That's what you want to see in a team, and these teams that are at the bottom. The young guys are playing good, not winning basketball, but you're building chemistry, getting prepared for the future, and that's all that you expected out of this Trailblazers team this season. They're doing what you need them to do for now. At 24, we have the Toronto Raptors. The Toronto Raptors here, again, they're not a good team. They have a lot of good pieces, and I don't think they were trying to be this bad this year. They're starting to get a little bit hotter. They're starting to win some games, but they are not very good. They're not. I don't know exactly what the issue is with this Toronto Raptors team, because you look at it on paper, and it should be a lineup that, should be playing for probably a play-in spot in the East right now, at least. They're bottom feeders right now, and I can't really explain why. But the Toronto Raptors keep losing games, keep losing close games. They don't really have a way to close out games or have a clutch player to win those games in the clutch. For now, they're still at the bottom of the league. They're at 24. Talk about another team at 23 that is pushing their timeline a little further than they should, it's the Brooklyn Nets. They are winning games when they shouldn't be winning games. They're the opposite of the Toronto Raptors there. They get a couple of tough injuries, but Dennis Schroeder can just turn into Olympics Dennis Schroeder at any given moment. When Cam Thomas was out there, he should be back soon, I believe. That is just a flamethrower who can drop 45 on you any given night. This is a Nets team that, again, is fun. They're winning too many games for what they expected this season. They're probably going to come back down to earth soon, but right now they're chilling a little bit higher than the basement of the NBA. At 22, we have the Kings. They are on a absolute steep decline towards the bottom of the league. 6 of their last 7 games have been losses. They have just not gelled the way they needed to. De'Aaron Fox and DeMar DeRozan have not worked out together. Everything on that team has not worked out together, and they have been on a cold streak. They've been one of the coldest teams in all of the NBA right now. The Kings need to find a way to turn it around. They were a team that was expecting to at least be a little bit competitive this season. Instead, the Kings now sit all the way at number 12 in the conference, a game and a half out of the play-in tournament even, not where they expected to be right now. They are 3-7 over their last 10, and everything is kind of going wrong in Sacramento. At 21, we have the Bulls. This is a team that's getting better. They're getting to about where you expect the Bulls to be this season, which is in that play-in range. They're currently sitting at number 8 in the conference. They've been solid of late, around 500, 4-6 in their last 10. It's not the greatest for them. They get Lonzo Ball back. They still have Zach LaVine producing at a pretty high level. I'm curious how many of those pieces they're going to hold on to and how many they're going to trade. That's the big question with the Chicago Bulls as the season continues. Not sure exactly how it goes. This is a team that I thought would be kind of actively tanking this year. They're not really doing that. They're just being the Bulls. They're going to be kind of mid all season long, and that's where they sit, at number 21 in our rankings. 20 goes to the Indiana Pacers, though, and this is an incredibly disappointing team. They go as their shooters go, and right now their shooters are not shooting the ball. Tyrese Halliburton especially having a down season. He needs to turn it around. They had these stretches last season where they seemingly could not hit the broadside of a barn. Right now, it's really starting to hurt them. 3 straight losses, 4-6 in their last 10, barely clinging on to a play-in spot right now. This is not a good look for them. They made the Eastern Conference Finals last year. I don't know what happened. It's basically the same team. They need to turn it around and quick if they want to make any kind of noise in the playoffs this year. At number 19, we have the Detroit Pistons. And I know in the standings, they're half a game back of those Pacers. But this is a Pistons team that shows a lot more life than the Pacers do. This is a Pistons team that even though they aren't the best, there's no doubt about it, they're still in that same tier. They've at least been fun to watch. That young talent has come around, and it's really made for good basketball. They went on a stretch there when they got healthy for the first time, won a couple of games in a row, was looking pretty impressive. They're probably going to find a way into the play-in game at least, and that is a huge step up from where they were last season. At number 18, we have the Miami Heat. They're sleepwalking right now. They're a sleeping giant. Jimmy Butler's hurt right now. Bam Adebayo's doing his thing. So is Tyler Hero. This is a Heat team that I want to believe in. This is a Heat team that I want to be patient with, but they do this every year, and I feel like they're kind of reaching the end of the window where they can just continue to be near the bottom of the East in that play-in standings and then turn it around. They're still, I would say, in that best of the worst tier, but still, it's a little bit concerning that they like to hang out around here all season long. I'd like to see some more out of the Miami Heat. Same can be said for the Minnesota Timberwolves. What a disappointing season after how far they made it last year, all the way to the conference finals. This is a team that just nothing is working. Again, they made that trade. They traded Cat away for Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo. Neither of them have really meshed well in that system. They haven't had their greatest season. And now Minnesota sitting at 500 through 20 games. Not where they wanted to be. Anthony Edwards called this team soft. This is a team that needs to get it together and quickly. This is the team that I think was definitely worse than last season in the Minnesota Timberwolves. but I thought they would still be better than this. I thought they would still be sitting, as opposed to a top 3 seed sitting around 6, 7 in the West. Instead, they're plummeting to a place where they might not even make the play-ins unless they can turn something around quickly. I'm very concerned for the Minnesota Timberwolves as the year continues. At 16 is the Hawks, maybe the most confusing team in all of the NBA. They're the only team to have lost to the Wizards. In fact, they did it twice. Not just twice, they did it twice in a row early on in the season. But they've also beaten the Cavaliers twice. Then they beat the Celtics. This is a team that has now beaten the top teams in the league and lost to the bottom team in the league. It's an interesting dichotomy on this team. This is a fun Hawks team. This is a good Hawks team, but sometimes they just don't have it, and sometimes they do. You never know what you're going to get out of this Hawks team, so they're going to sit around the middle of the NBA for now as they try to make a run in the NBA Cup. We'll talk about that later. At number 15, we have the Suns. This is a Suns team that is just not the same without Kevin Durant. It's a pretty big compliment for a guy who's in his late 30s. Kevin Durant makes that team go. And it's not like it's a bad team without him, but with Kevin Durant, this is a Suns team that is top 10, arguably even top 5. He's going to miss at least another week, and this team is not the same without him. Hopefully they can survive the storm. They were able to weather it a little bit last time, but I'm not sure how sustainable this team is without Kevin Durant right now. 14, we have the Los Angeles Lakers. LeBron James seems like time is starting to catch up to him. I'm not ready to say he's done, but maybe 82 games this season is not the move. Maybe he needs to take a rest day. He's barely getting to 10 points. He's been super inefficient, the most inefficient in his entire 20-year career. He needs to start turning it around. This is a Lakers team that's struggled as of late, and I think LeBron James could do with a rest game or two. I know he doesn't want to, but I think it would be beneficial for him and for the team for him to get at least a game or two of rest in the next week. At 13, we have the Bucks. How about a resurgent season for them? They were sitting at the bottom of these power rankings at the beginning of the year. Giannis has turned this team around through sheer determination. They figured it out. They're now the 1 seed out of the East in the in-season tournament. This is a huge, huge boost for the Bucks, who are climbing the rankings of the East. Currently sit at 5th in the conference after starting near the bottom for so long. They're one of the hottest teams in all of basketball, winning 7 straight games, 9-1 over their last 10. This is a Bucks squad that is just getting back to where we expected them to. We all knew this team wasn't as bad as their record in the beginning. They figured it out. It's good to see. I think that the Giannis rumors can get shut down now that they're winning games. At number 12, we have the Spurs. They're putting up points. They are putting up points, and that is exciting to see. Victor Wembanyama getting more comfortable in that system with Chris Paul. They're in the play-in spot. They again have been one of the hotter teams in all of the sport, right? They score 110 points a game. Their defense needs to step it up a little bit. They were playing better defense last season, but still, huge step up for Victor Wembanyama and this Spurs team. They are here at number 12. 11 goes to Nikola Jokic. It goes to the Nuggets, but Nikola Jokic, as we all know, watching these Nuggets games, is not the same team with and without him on the court. It's a huge difference, but he is the best player on the planet. As long as he's there, they're going to, at a minimum, be a top 15 team in the league. Nuggets at 11. Getting into the top 10, though, the New York Knicks crack the list here with the addition of Cat. They now have a real second option to score, right? Before, it was Jalen Brunson versus the world. You had a couple of guys that would add some secondary scoring, but now having Cat there, a guy who's seemingly putting up 35 points a night over there in New York, he has been huge, a resurgence in scoring for him. That is a huge get. They're starting to turn it around, 8-2 in their last 10 games, and they are a very dangerous team as the season continues and they start to figure out their defense a little bit more. Continuing in the top 10 at number 9, we have the Los Angeles Clippers, a team that I was down and out on, but James Harden has turned back into prime James Harden right now, has propelled them to the 5th seed in the West so far, and they have just been near flawless at home over the last couple of weeks. They started off pretty sloppy at home. They lost their first 3 or 4 games. Now they're 9-4 at home. They've been incredibly hot. This is the Clippers team that you do not want to see, the way that they're scoring the ball, the way they're playing defense. This is a dangerous Clipper squad. I'm curious how long they can hold out. Maybe Kawhi Leonard can come back. I don't know. That's kind of just a pipe dream over there for the Kawhi Leonard hopefuls. This is a good Clippers team, and they're here at number 9. Number 8 goes to the Warriors. They've kind of fallen off a little bit. They've been hit with injuries. Draymond Green's fallen back a bit, but they're still a very good team, right? There's no doubt about that. They've lost 5 straight, but still a top 10 team in the league by my estimations. They'll figure it out. They just need to get their rotation set again. They were running one of those deep rotations. 11 guys were getting in, and Steve Kerr, that was working. They need to figure out how to get back to an effective rotation. Right now, they're kind of slipping a bit. At number 7, the Orlando Magic. How about them? They're figuring it out. They started off this year hot, one of the hottest teams in basketball. Then Paolo Banchero went down, and then they were the coldest team in basketball. They have figured it out behind the Wagner brothers. The defense continues to do what it is, and this is a Orlando Magic team that is going to be a deadly team in the playoffs this year as long as they continue to play like this when Paolo Banchero comes back, which I'm curious how much the play style is going to change when he does. Should be back soon, though. Number 6, we have the Grizzlies. I love this Grizzlies team. This is a Grizzlies team that I think should be getting a little bit more love even. I consider them putting in the top 5, but they lost a game to that number 5 team. These are still one of the hottest teams in all of basketball right now, but they just ran into an absolute buzzsaw in our number 5 team, the Mavericks. But the Grizzlies, the rookies are really stepping up. That depth is really stepping up, and I'm very, very impressed with how well they're meshing it all together just like that. At number 5, like I said, it is the Mavs, and the reason they're all the way up at 5 is even when you have a bad night from Kyrie and Clay, Luka is doing his thing. They have options. If someone is having an off night, they're finding a way to win. 9-1 over their last 10. They have been incredible offensively, and it's so much fun to watch this team when they're on. They're the 5th best team in the league. But getting to the top 4. At number 4, it's the Thunder, and this might be a bit of a hot take from me because the Thunder are getting even better. It's kind of scary to say that, but the Thunder at 4, I just think, again, the top 4 teams are in a tier of their own right now. I just think with the way they've been playing, they're not quite playing at the same level as the number 3 team in the Houston Rockets, who got a big win over the Thunder the other day. They've got a little bit of a worse record. They've got a lot of young players that are really, really stepping up. And I think this is a Rockets team that could be very dangerous as when we start to get into the later season and the playoffs roll around. But getting to the top 2, number 2, it's the Cavs. They took a couple of tough losses to the Hawks earlier, ended up missing out on the NBA play-in tournament right there, but they beat the Celtics. They got revenge. They beat the Celtics, and that's huge for them. They're going to stay in the top 2. This is a real contender at number 2 in Cleveland, and that coaching change did wonders. But of course, at number 1, it's the Boston Celtics. There's no better team in the NBA. They are just a juggernaut. They're not immortal. They're not perfect, but they are better than everybody else by a country mile. And this is just a team that still is going to get healthier. They're starting to phase Kristaps Porzingis back in. This is a team that's just going to get better and better as the season goes on, and I'm a little scared to see how good this team will get. But let me know what you think. Top 10, Knicks, Clippers, Warriors, Magic, Grizzlies, Mavericks, Thunder, Rocket, Cavs, and Celtics. Let me know what your thoughts are. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we break down the NBA Cup. 4 teams out of each conference. We'll break down the matchups, who's going to win, and who's going to win each matchup, and who's going to raise the second ever NBA Cup. Stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts, podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Wednesday, December 4th. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over the NBA power rankings for this week. In this segment, we finish up our NBA talk, going over the NBA Cup. The bracket has been set. 4 teams on each side from each of the 4 groups. We'll take a look at who's playing who's going to win each matchup, and who's going to raise the NBA Cup, just the second one ever. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those 2 things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Wednesday, December 4th. But like I was saying, in this segment, we're going to finish up our NBA talk for the day, talking a little bit about the NBA Cup. Just the second one ever. Of course, the Los Angeles Lakers rose the banner for the NBA Cup last season, the first one, the inaugural year. They are not going to be there. We will not have a repeat NBA Cup champion. So we're going to start off in the East here. The 1 through 4 seeds, the Milwaukee Bucks, the New York Knicks, the Atlanta Hawks, and the Orlando Magic. One of those not quite like the others, but they had a incredible hot streak, beating the Celtics and the Cavaliers twice to get a nice win in a tough group. Hawks escape out of there. In the West, the Thunder are the 1 seed, the Rockets the 2, the Warriors the 3, and the Magic get the 4 seed. This works just like a normal playoff. 1 plays 4, 2 plays 3, winner plays each other, and then of course, each side sends a representative to get to the NBA Cup. So starting off in the East here, we'll break down that 1 and 4 matchup. The Milwaukee Bucks have been one of the hottest teams in all of basketball, right? Giannis continues to play like one of the best players on earth, but the Magic have been scary efficient. Even without their best player, that is going to be a great game next week on Tuesday to watch. I'm leaning towards the Magic in this one. It's a 1-game playoff, and the way that they have been able to play just together, that defense in Milwaukee concerns me, and I think the Magic defense is going to be enough to get them off their game a little bit and get, I guess, an upset win here to advance to the next round of the NBA Cup. Their opponent, it's probably just going to be the Knicks. As good as the Hawks have been, they're super inconsistent, and I think the Knicks have been a little bit more consistent. I think they get the win here, setting up a Magic versus Knicks battle for the Eastern Conference. As far as the Western Conference goes, the Thunder versus the Mavericks should be a really good game. It depends if all 3 of the big 3 for the Mavericks are on. I think I might lead towards them, but the Thunder, the way they're able to play defense, getting those bigs back are huge. I'm leaning towards the Thunder in this to take care of business against the Mavericks. Their opponent between the Rockets and the Warriors, if the Warriors can't break this slump, this might be an easy win for the Rockets. It's a big game. They might get up for it. I think I'm still going to take the Rockets. But heading into the final set here, the Thunder play the Rockets. We saw that game. We saw that movie play out earlier, just a couple days ago. I think the Thunder get revenge here, head to the NBA Cup final to take on the Orlando Magic. That one should be a lot of fun. Again, this is going to be a couple of weeks down the line here. Thunder versus Magic. Paolo Banchero could potentially be back for that matchup, the NBA Cup final, that extra game in Vegas. I think the Magic take this one. And if we want to talk about what's going to be best for the NBA Cup, that's a whole nother discussion. We were having this discussion in our production meeting when we were talking about the NBA Cup. This is something that had a lot of fanfare around it. LeBron James and the Lakers won last year. It had a lot of attention, a lot of celebration surrounding it. It doesn't need to be a big city, a big franchise to win it this year. Like, does it have to be the Knicks for it to keep mattering? Does it have to be the Warriors to keep mattering? Or can it go to a smaller market team like a Milwaukee, like an Orlando, like Houston, who hasn't really been the most successful basketball franchise as of late? I still think it doesn't matter. You see the way the players go out and play a little bit harder for the NBA Cup, and I think that's the most important thing. Overall, I think the Magic are the best team in this bracket, actually, aside from the Thunder. But I think the Magic get a little bit healthier, and I think they find a way to win this NBA Cup. But let me know what you think. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we turn our attention to baseball. Rob Manfred, the commissioner, has come out with a new proposed rule. We'll talk about what that rule is, if it's a good idea, bad idea for the sport, and for the future of it. We'll talk about that next, here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Wednesday, December 4th. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over our NBA coverage, the NBA Cup, and our NBA Power Rankings. In this segment, we turn our attention to the world of baseball. So massive news coming out of there as the winter meetings approach. No, it's not about Juan Soto. That is the one that's the one big domino we are still all waiting on. But a proposed rule by Commissioner Rob Manfred has hit the open air. It's an interesting decision. It's an interesting rule. We'll talk about what it is. It's called the Golden At-Bat Rule. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Wednesday, December 4th. But like I was saying, we're going to finish off our show here with a little bit of MLB news. The Golden At-Bat Rule proposed by Commissioner Rob Manfred. And very simply, it's a very simple rule. It's just, in any situation, the manager once per game can say, I want X batter to come up to the plate. So an example for you. The Yankees down by 3. It's the bottom of the order in a huge moment in, let's say, the World Series, for instance. They say, no, we don't want Alex Verdugo at the plate. We want Aaron Judge. They use the Golden At-Bat, and they say, they flip the order, basically. They say, actually, Aaron Judge, it's your turn to bat. That is a very simple rule. It's also the dumbest rule I've ever heard. This goes against everything the spirit of baseball has. This is a game going back over 150 years, a super historical game. That changes the way that you play it, right? That changes the magic of some of these moments. Some of the biggest moments in all of baseball history have come from some of these unlikely guys, these bottom of the order guys, and you're just going to take that away. I know Rob Manfred is worried about the sport dying, and sure, there's concerns of that, right? You're losing viewership, the games are long, and kids are not as into baseball as they used to be. That's fine. There's other ways to do it rather than inventing a new sport, rather than becoming banana ball, right? This is not something you need to do. You can do other things, like, for instance, do what the leagues are doing. The biggest thing is having a league-wide deal for TV deals. That's going to be the biggest thing to get you the most money. The World Series is still, and baseball playoffs as a whole, is still an incredibly popular event, and that's not going to change anytime soon. The idea of throwing out a rule like this, like the golden at bat, is just going to take away baseball. It basically turns it into a completely different sport. I think that might be the dumbest rule proposal, and I'm all here for rule proposals. They bring in the pitch clock to quicken up the game. That's fine. I don't mind that. I'm actually a fan of that. Robo-umps, great idea. Bring them in. Make those changes. But if you're going to fundamentally change the way that baseball works, one of the core rules of baseball is you hand the lineup, and that's what you have to do. You got to make sure the lineup's the right order. You skip someone in the order, that's an out. There's rules in the rule book for that. Now you're just going to throw all of that out the window, and you're going to say, actually, I want our guy to get an extra at bat. It's going to completely change the way that baseball is played. It's going to completely change the way it's looked at, and it's not going to be anything that's super exciting, right? Sure, you can go out and do this once a game, but generally, none of this is going to come to a head. I think you take a look at this rule, and it's just you're just trying to get big moments for big players, get those big matchups out there, but that's not how baseball works. You have to build a full team. You can't just sign 3 guys and have them do the entire team. You saw the Yankees try to do that with Soto and Judge. There'd be a couple games that finished a little bit differently if that golden at-bat rule would have applied to the Yankees last season, right? The Dodgers already have a super team, so it doesn't matter. If you're looking to something to truly change it, it's never going to happen, but throw in a salary cap. Throw in something that'll make the smaller teams have a shot to go and sign these big guys. So it's not just the Dodgers and the Yankees being these big spenders and these small market teams not really being able to get anything done. Get something so it's equal, so you have more parity in the league. This is just a couple ideas out there, but this golden at-bat rule ruins everything about the game of baseball. There's no positives here. There's nothing I can look at and say, yes, that's going to work out great for the sport of baseball, for the future of the sport of baseball. It completely changes the way that you manage. It completely changes the way the history books would look at it, and everything would have to have an asterisk on it. I don't agree with the idea of it, and I think it might be the stupidest. Rule I've ever heard, if I'm being completely honest. And that's not some crazy language right there. There's just nothing that screams baseball about this. That's Little League, that's Bush League, that's fantasy baseball that you're playing, and I hate that it's even being proposed. They've had so many good ideas being proposed over the years for baseball that Rob Manfred has dragged his feet on. He's been, no, we don't want to make these changes. We don't want to do this. But then he has this crazy idea come to him, I guess, in the middle of the night, and he says, run wild with it. It doesn't make any sense to me. This might be the stupidest rule proposal in all of sports. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this golden at-bat rule. I can't see a positive spin to it. But thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We will be back same time, same place tomorrow, talking about everything that happened in the world of sports today. I will see you then. You will have a good one. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn it.